So there I was, 18 years old, fifth son of a war fortress full of knights, and my one goal in life was to never do anything ever again. Let me back up. My name is Valerius. I got reborn into a fantasy world, not the fun kind. The kind with counts and castles and men who train with swords at dawn while I try to sleep through it. My family is the X family, 700 years old, 5 earls, 17 viscounts, 33 barons. The whole, we've been stabbing people since before your grandpa package. And in this world, when you turn 18, you pick a lane. Option 1, swear to be a guardian knight, bodyguard the heir forever. Hard pass. Option 2, leave the family, go be a pioneer, walk into the wilderness with a horse and a dream, and build your own empire from dirt. Terrifying. Option 3, join the king's knights, serve some guy. No thanks. I wanted option 0, the one where I stay home and coast and nobody expects anything. Because that's the character I'd been playing for 18 years. Lazy noble kid, average talent, never picked a fight, never won one. My own father called me lazy to my face. Fair. It was load-bearing laziness. But then the universe gave me a cheat. On my coming-of-age night, I unlocked a soul skill called Guidance of Fate. Sounds epic. Here's what it actually does. Once a month, at exactly 8 in the evening, a pleasant female voice reads me one piece of valuable information. That's it. No sword, no fireball, a monthly voicemail from destiny. It's basically a horoscope, except it's real, and it saves my life. And that cheat is why I couldn't stay home. Because the voicemail had started telling me things I wasn't supposed to know. And a man who knows things wastes them by lounging around a castle. So I made the one choice nobody expected from the laziest boy in the family. I went to my father's study, and I told him I'd be a pioneer. My father is Gareth, Count of the Eagle, 6th generation clan chief, gold knight, aura like a thunderstorm wearing a person. He looked at me like I'd told him I was becoming a mermaid. This doesn't fit your personality, he said. Correct. It absolutely does not. But you can't say, actually, father, a ghost lady tells me the future once a month, so I've got plans. So I gave him the noble version. Eagle stuff. Forging my own path. Spreading the family glory. He bought it. Mostly because he wanted to buy it. Here's the thing about my dad. He acts like a granite statue that occasionally issues threats. But the second I left the room, he dropped the stern face and smiled. Told his shadow assassin to destroy every record of the investigation he'd secretly run on me. Then he stood at his window and basically whispered, "Go forth, my son. Be great." Big softy under the armor. In this family, that's practically a war crime. Oh, and the family rules gave me exactly 3 months to pack up and leave the castle. Dad, being a sentimental old wolf, bumped it to 4. Cool. 4 months to build a going-away plan for the rest of my life. First stop, though, before all the empire nonsense. I had an appointment with a sack of teenagers. See, my monthly voicemail had told me something specific. 2 weeks out, in a house in Silver Star City, a couple of gangsters were about to sell 2 boys to some very sketchy men in black robes. 2 boys with immense potential. 1 blonde, 1 silver-haired. Rescue them, said the voice, and they'll become your allies. An RPG quest marker, basically. Ping! Go here, collect allies. I love free allies. So I rode into Silver Star City, borrowed a squad of city guards off a lawman named Thorn, and kicked in a door mid-transaction. My entrance line was flawless. I burst in, sword out, and yelled, "There's a traitor! No! Everyone put your weapons down and don't move!" 10 out of 10 opening, very smooth, very in control. The gang boss took one look at the guards behind me and yeeted himself out the window. He made it about 4 steps before a guard outside separated his head from his opinions. His 3 underlings hit the floor so fast they left dents. The 2 robed weirdos drew their swords. That part I handled myself. Cramped room, short sword, 2 guys who thought they were dangerous. It was over before it started. Simple, clean, decisive. My guard captain gasped like he'd watched a magic trick. I checked the bodies. Both had a black clover branded on their foreheads. Some cult thing. Aldrich, the guard officer, went pale and asked, very politely, if he could keep the corpses because they were related to important events. Sure, buddy. I came for the sack. He can have the crime scene. I opened the sack. 2 boys, just like the voicemail said. Both with slave brands burned into their foreheads. Both unconscious. I threw them over my horse and rode home, and every servant I passed stared at the 18-year-old carrying 2 limp, handsome teenagers into his bedroom. Nobody said a word. In this castle, gossiping about the master's business is a fast way to stop having a business, or a head. While the boys slept it off, I went to see the family's living fossil. Elder Granger, 320 years old, naps in a rocking chair at the bottom of a bunker lined with the names of dead heroes. Every pioneer visits him before leaving. He's the walking map of the whole kingdom. I bowed, waited for him to wake up, and asked where a fresh nobody should go build an empire. He gave me 3 options: Greylight Wasteland, safe; weak monsters, boring, some family barons nearby; Laya Great Forest, dangerous, rich, sitting on top of 2 rival kingdoms like a picnic on a landmine; and the new northern land, freshly conquered from the mountain dwarves who very much wanted it back. Then he fell asleep again mid-sentence. Living fossils, man, full of wisdom and naps. I like the boring one, obviously. I'm a coward with a horoscope. Greylight Wasteland it is. Then I went back to my room and immediately noticed a problem. Quiet. Too quiet. So I kicked the door instead of opening it. Good instinct. The blond boy had been crouched behind it for an ambush, and my kick launched him across the room like a sack of laundry. His little brother stood there frozen, holding a wooden stick, doing the math on whether a stick beats a bronze knight. It does not. Too inexperienced, I told them. I grabbed the stick, tossed the silver-haired one next to his brother, set down some food, pulled up a chair, and sat. The blond kid, bless him, struggled to his feet, shoved his brother behind himself, and made me an offer. Spare my brother. I'll be your loyal slave forever. He thought I was the buyer, thought I'd purchased them like furniture. He was ready to die to protect the kid. That's when I got it. These 2 weren't for sale, they were for saving, and the fact that this half-dead teenager's first move was to shield his brother told me everything the voicemail meant by potential. Loyalty like that you can't buy. You can only earn. So I made him a different offer. Not one of you. Both of you. Guardian knights. Loyal to me. Trained by me. Family. His stomach growled loud enough to answer for him. I tossed them the bread. They inhaled it. Blonde one's name was Caspian. Silver one was Silas. I burned the slave brands off their foreheads myself, and when they looked in the mirror and saw the marks gone, they dropped to their knees and cried. 2 kids who'd never owned anything, and the first thing they got back was their own faces. Then I taught them the night awakening technique, just to see what immense potential actually meant. It took me half a month to awaken when I was learning. These 2 did it in 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours. I stood there recalculating my entire life. The voice hadn't been exaggerating. Caspian awakened fire. Silas awakened ice. In 2 weeks, they went from starving slaves to bronze knights, while I, the master, was still stuck sweating in the middle of bronze like a participation trophy. My allies were monsters, and they were mine, which meant step 1 of the empire was, do not let these 2 little geniuses run off, or who will I even cry to? Meanwhile, Dad had been shopping. He sent me an aid package. I read the list twice. 80,000 gold coins, 12 mid-grade magic crystals, 120 low-grade ones, 18 horses with actual red dragon blood in them, 6 sets of top-tier armor, 18 premium longswords, and 12 high-rank bronze knights, on loan, forever. 300,000 gold coins of value, half a year of taxes from the second biggest city we own. For the lazy 5th son nobody had bets on. My 4th brother got half that when he left. I sat there stroking my chin like a cartoon merchant. The old wolf loved me. He just filed it under logistics so he wouldn't have to say it. That night, 8 o'clock, the voicemail rang again. And this one wasn't a gift. It was a threat. The voice told me that 13 days out, near the West River provincial capital, at a place called Sakalos Ridge, a group of assassins was waiting, disguised as bandits, sent to kill the 5th son of the Count of the Eagle. Top killer was high-rank silver. Recommendation? Take a detour, or get chewed up in a political war I want no part of. Sakalos Ridge sits in Hack's family territory. The Hax family is our oldest enemy. So, translation. The neighbors want me dead before I've even unpacked. Cute. Fine. We detour. That's what the horoscope is for. Before I left, I had to do the hard part. I had to say goodbye. I collected the 12 knights first, made them swear the oath in front of the priest of the goddess of life, swords to chests, divine light, fates bound to mine. Their captain was named Kalen. Remember that name. He looked like a man who did nothing but hit things. He was about to become the most important person in my entire empire, and neither of us knew it yet. There was also Finian, and Theron, and Ronan, and a merchant-born knight named Corbin, my starting roster. I gave each of them a premium longsword and a dragon blood horse right there. Generosity, on day one, before they'd earned anything. Because here's the one rule my father actually taught me, and it's not written anywhere. On the battlefield, your knight is the one who takes the sword meant for you. Not your wife, not your kids, not your brothers, your knight. So you never, ever let a loyal man feel cheap. Dad watched the whole thing from his window and nodded. Proud, old softy. Then I went to my mother, Lyra. Sitting on the windowsill, weaving a silk scarf in the sunlight. I'd rehearsed a whole speech in my head, got to the door and forgot every word of it. "Mother, I'm leaving tomorrow," is all I managed. "Yes, my fledgling eagle has grown up. Go fly high, come back in glory." She gave me the scarf. I hugged her. All the words I couldn't say went into that one hug. Then I walked out before either of us could ruin it. And on the 3rd of April, in the year 9720, I rode out the east gate of the only home I'd ever known. 6 wagons, 12 knights, 2 teenage geniuses, 1 silk scarf, and a monthly voicemail from a woman who lived inside my soul. The lazy 5th son was gone. The pioneer was on the road. Now I just had to survive the road. The plan was simple. Detour around the assassin ambush, take a teleport array across 5,000 kilometers of kingdom, and start a country in a place called the Grey Light Wasteland. Simple on paper. On the road, things get complicated. Mostly because people keep trying to hand me things. First guy was a merchant. Stood on top of his own carriage on the noble highway and waved at me like his life depended on it, which legally it kind of did. Turns out a noble of my rank gets tax-free entry into a city for 20 carriages. I had 6. He wanted to hide his 8 in my convoy to dodge the entry tax. And his cargo was half-elf slaves, which are extremely illegal, because there's a half-elf kingdom next door that gets grumpy about it. I told him I wasn't interested in his slaves. He sweated through his shirt and offered me something else. 2 little spheres. Said he'd obtained them by chance, which is merchant for, "I stole these." I poured a little fighting spirit into one. It twitched. Barely, but it twitched. Valuable then, so I let him join my convoy. For 1,000 gold and the 2 mystery balls. He thanked me like I'd saved his soul instead of his tax bill. We rolled through the West River provincial capital, the eagle banner flying, and the gate officer waved us straight through without a single tax. His scribe, poor, sweet summer scribe, asked why they weren't charging the guy with 30 half-elf horses. The officer slapped him on the head. "That's the X-family eagle banner, one of the 5 great powers of this province. You want to tax that? The X-family are a pack of mad dogs. Behave!" Reputation. It's the best armor money can't buy. Then we teleported. 6,000 gold, 1 flash of white light, and we came out the other side in the capital of Cardero Province. And Cardero Province was a dump. I mean that clinically. Human and animal excrement everywhere. Stench that could stagger a horse. Thugs on every corner. Patrol officers extorting people right next to other patrol officers. My night captain Kalen stood there in genuine shock and said this was worse than the worst slum back home. And this was the provincial capital. The nice part. I covered my nose and quietly rewrote my expectations for the entire world. We went to register at the administration building, which was a 2-story stone box painted white to hide the fact that it was gray and giving up. The gate guard took one look at my simple clothes and called me a country bumpkin. Bold, for a man about to die. My knight drew steel. The guards screamed for backup. A whole crowd of guards and one knight poured out, ready to make it a thing. Then their governor came out, saw the eagle banner on my carriage, and swallowed his own sentence whole. He ordered them to hand over the guard who'd insulted me. I drew my short sword and put it through the man's chest, right there, in front of the governor, for calling me a bumpkin. Harsh? Sure. But here's the lesson my captain didn't understand and asked about later. I killed the guard. I did not kill the knight or the other 13 guards, even though I could have, because everything has a limit. Push a cornered man far enough, and he fights to the death and takes some of your people with him. 1 dead guard is a message. 14 dead is a war. Know the difference, and you get to keep your knights. Kalen just stared at me like I'd started speaking in numbers. Note to self, hire someone whose brain isn't made entirely of biceps. The governor, meanwhile, smiled at me with a face like a man passing a kidney stone, wished me a lovely stay, and privately prayed we'd never meet again. His knight asked why they had to eat that on their own turf. The governor's smile died. Other noble kids you can bully. The X family are mad dogs. Don't poke them. Mad dogs. Second time in a week. I'm keeping the branding. Next stop was my uncle, Eldrin, also an X, also a pioneer, 50 years into building his own place, Goot Territory. And Goot Territory was the exact opposite of the capital. Clean roads, well-fed people, rosy cheeks, a place with a spine. So this is what the family name looks like when a competent man runs it. Uncle Eldrin greeted me like a long-lost son, introduced his heir, my cousin Rowan. I stuck out my hand for a handshake, which nobody here does. Then I watched 2 grown noblemen quietly panic about the weird gesture. From the kid who grew up too sheltered to know better. I gave them 3 mid-grade magic crystals as a gift, 15,000 gold, more than half this territory's annual taxes. Uncle nearly dropped them. The gift worked. Uncle got warm. Gave me 200 serfs, 20 carts of grain, 200 spears, and a real map of the province. The return favor of a man who gets it. Manpower is the whole game in pioneering. Then he threw me a banquet, where roughly 30 pretty girls threw me looks like I was the last dessert. Cousin Rowan leaned in, grinning, and suggested I could, relax a little. No, cousin. As a faithful knight, premarital relations are a desecration of marriage. I am not a faithful knight. I just wasn't getting married before 30 without a very good business reason, and some girl smiled at me at a party is not a business reason. Rowan gave me the awkward, okay, weirdo smile and left me alone, which was the whole point. That night I did the math. Best direction to explore was Southwest Greylight Wasteland. Uncle said so. Great Plains, tons of resources. Then, 8 o'clock, the voicemail rang, and politely informed me that Southwest Greylight Wasteland now had a Goblin King, uniting the tribes, planning to attack southern Cardero province within a year, in revenge for humans stealing their homeland. So, not the Southwest then. Thanks, Uncle. Great tip. Real, walk directly into the Goblin Uprising energy. I shook it off and kept moving, my convoy fat with 200 fresh serfs. And of course, being fat and slow on a bandit road, we got jumped. Hundreds of bandits, hiding in the bushes, led by a boss named Kale. Kale was a mid-bronze warrior who liked to boil and eat his own men when they disobeyed, which tells you the kind of workplace culture we're dealing with. His scout warned him we had 200 armed men. Kale told the scout to shut up or get boiled, because the higher-ups ordered this. Interesting. Higher-ups. File that away. The ambush was a joke. My 11 bronze knights on dragon horses versus a mob of desperate commoners with sticks. Heads came off in bunches. Kale charged one of my knights, Finian, thinking he'd bag a kill to impress his terrified crew. Finian took his head off in one stroke. Kale's last thought, I'm told, was wondering why he was getting taller. That was his own body, staying on the ground without him. 8 minutes. That's how long the battle lasted. 43 bandits dead, 57 captured, free labor for my empire. I gave the captured gold to my knights as a bonus, and I interrogated the 2 bandit lieutenants, one of whom coughed up the useful part before Kalen's sword coughed it out of him. They had a noble backer. Only Kale knew who, and Kale was currently in 2 pieces. Kalen, wiping his blade, actually said something smart for once. There are only a few noble families around here, my lord. Ask about their reputations along the road. The one with the worst reputation is probably behind it. Look at that. The muscle can think. There's hope for him yet. So that's the road. Every 100 kilometers, someone tries to rob me, tax me, or stab me, and every time the horoscope or the knights or the family name bails me out. And somewhere out in the wasteland, a piece of empty dirt was waiting to become mine. I just had to go take it. So I went and took it. The gray light wasteland is exactly as advertised. Wasteland. Endless barren dirt, weak monsters, and thousands of goblins squatting on land nobody else wanted, which made it perfect. Weak monsters means I could clear it. Empty land means it was free. I picked a patch about 100 square kilometers and decided this dirt was going to be a country. The current tenants disagreed, so we evicted them. Goblins in this world are green, nocturnal, cowardly, and have been getting stomped by human pioneers for 100 years. It's in their bones. So when we wiped out the Stone Tribe and 6 tribes around it, the survivors didn't rally. They packed up and left. Tens of thousands of them, migrating west, choosing to go fight kobolds and gnolls over facing humans again. I single-handedly relocated an entire goblin population without even chasing them. They just heard human settlers and noped off the map. Which brings me to my army. My army at this point was 200 serfs my uncle gave me. Serfs. Empty shells with spears. Not exactly the royal guard. So I did what any lazy man with a spreadsheet would do. I turned freedom into a loot drop. I gathered them and made an offer. Take 3 goblin heads, and I pardon your serf status. You become a free man. Every goblin after that, a silver coin. It's a battle pass. Kill things, unlock rewards, unlock yourself. And it worked like a drug. These men had been born owning nothing, not even their own bodies, and I just told them their chains had a price, and the price was courage. 79 of them earned their freedom in the first fight. They knelt and wept. 24 more got silver. The rest looked at their free friends and picked up their spears like men possessed. Turns out people fight a lot harder for their own future than for a stranger's dinner. Who knew? And the fights themselves were lopsided in the best way. A goblin tribe is a few hundred green cowards with crude weapons and 100 years of trauma about humans. My 11 bronze knights on dragon blood horses went through them like a scythe through wheat. My freedom-hungry serfs held the line behind the wagons while the knights did the killing. And every serf who bagged 3 heads walked off the field a free man. The giant stone tribe fell. Then 6 more tribes around it. And the survivors didn't even wait for me to come finish the job. They packed their whole world onto their backs and fled west. They handed tens of thousands of their own to the deeper monster clans as free slaves. All to avoid the human who'd shown up on their doorstep. I depopulated a region with a reputation and a payroll. Never even broke a sweat. While they cleared the neighborhood, I went shopping for real estate. My whole territory was 3 possible spots, and I wanted the one with water. There was a stream up north that had pooled into a 1,500-acre lake. Fertile land all around it. A defensible slope for a castle. Close to a salt mine my men had just found. I stood on the shore, looked at the water, and named it the Lake of Praying Stars. The light of hope, and all that. Mostly it just had good drainage. My knight Kalen looked at it and immediately started listing tactical advantages. Fertile, easy to irrigate, defensible slope, close to the salt. And I realized this muscle brain had a real brain hiding in there. Keep talking, Kalen. Oh, the salt mine. Let me tell you about the salt mine. My men found a cave, and the walls were salt. High-purity salt, the kind you barely purify before you sell it as premium goods. In a world before refrigerators, salt is money that grows on rocks. Kalen's face changed the second he touched it. This is a treasure. Guard it with your life. We sealed it with a boulder and told nobody, because the fastest way to lose a treasure is to brag about it. And the salt was just the appetizer. Over the next few months, the land around my lake kept coughing up gifts like it was trying to bribe me. A mithril mine, magical plants in the caves under the lake, and a hidden teleport array still running, leading down into an underground world called Colorado. I found that last one because a goblin named Zarg lied to my face about iron ore to save his life. Zarg was, in his own words, a respectable miner and a father of 8. He was also a liar. He told my men there was iron ore 100 meters down, betting we'd never dig to check. So I tested him. I asked if the ore was real. He swore it was. So I flicked my sword, killed the goblin next to him, and said, "Sorry, I missed." Zarg wet himself and swore harder. So I ordered the rest of the captives killed one by one, waiting to see if the truth fell out before he did. It did. "There's no iron ore. It's a hidden teleport array to my underground world. It recharges off ambient demonic energy every 6 months." See, that's the trick with goblins. A third of what they say is true, and you can only find which third by making dying very inconvenient. I let Zarg live. He'd earned it, technically, by finally being useful. He lay on the ground, breathing like a man discovering oxygen for the first time. "Congratulations, Zarg. Your reward for lying to me is not dying. Enjoy." So now I had salt, mithril, magic plants, and a door to the underworld, all within walking distance of my new lake. It started to feel less like luck and more like the universe padding my starting zone. I closed my eyes on the ride home and told myself the only thing that mattered. Only strength lets you keep the treasure. So, develop, develop, develop. And developing meant building, and building meant meetings. And meetings, I discovered, are where dreams go to be strangled by muscle men. I planned the whole town on paper. Farmland north and south of the lake, 600 meters from the water so the flood season wouldn't drown the crops. Rice near the water, wheat further out. 2 villages, a castle on the defensible slope. Fish ponds in the flood zone, fed by a hand-dug tributary, 3.5 kilometers long. I'm the only person in the entire operation who knows how any of this works. My knights are a wall of biceps who think a fish pond is a waste of a good lake. Kalen actually questioned the fish pond, said the fish had no economic value. So I told him the knights would dig the river themselves, for training. Kalen looked into my eyes and shut his mouth. Smart man. Because he understood that if he argued one more time, someone was going to hand him a shovel, and that someone was going to be me. My 11 elite bronze knights spent 5 days digging a canal, ostensibly to hone their fighting spirit. Actually, because I said so, and because they'd each gotten 6 magic crystals worth 3 years of cultivation, all for the low, low price of manual labor. What complaints could they possibly have? Dig, my beautiful, expensive shovels. Dig! I also set up the rules of the land, because a country is just a set of rules with a flag on top. Free men got 20 acres, half private, half taxed. Serfs got less. Soldiers got pay in grain, silver, and combat bonuses. And I made one law the whole world could learn from. Anyone who relieves themselves in the street gets 3 lashes the first time, property seized the second, demoted to permanent slavery the third. Turns out if you can't solve the hygiene problem, you can at least solve the people creating it. Nobody broke that law twice. My road stayed clean while the rest of the world waded through filth. Sometimes civilization is just deciding to not step in it. Then, one night, the voicemail rang with the bad news I was starting to expect. 3 months out, 3,000 kilometers west, 2 red dragons and a golden dragon were about to throw hands, and the fallout would send a monster uprising rolling toward the northwest of the kingdom. The wave heading for my lake was mostly gnolls, strongest at low silver, arriving in 6 months. I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. I came here for safety. I picked the boring option specifically to avoid war. And the universe, which lives in my soul and reads me the future, said, LOL, no. War's coming anyway. 6 months. I paced the cabin. 2 choices: freeze development and hide and waste a whole year. Or keep building and pray one of us breaks through to silver in time to hold the line. And you know what? We'd just made a start. I wasn't giving up my lake to a pack of dogs. So, I chose door 2. Build harder, get stronger, buy slaves, hire blacksmiths and carpenters and an architect, and turn my dirt into a fortress in 6 months flat. The next morning, cultivating in front of my cabin, I broke through. Mid-bronze to high bronze. A month of actual effort finally paying off. My wood attribute fighting spirit meant crazy recovery and endurance, so my base strength jumped too. Turns out if you stop being lazy for 30 straight days, things happen. Filed under, never doing that again unless I have to. And that's the day Liam showed up. Liam was a serf, one of the 200. And when I first told my knights to pick someone to train, I skipped all the veterans and pointed at a nobody. I told Caspian to take him. Everyone was confused. Even Liam was confused. I just had a feeling. Half a month of awakening later, that nobody serf had become a knight squire, and he knelt in front of me swearing eternal loyalty on his life. You earned all of this, I told him. I said if you could awaken your fighting spirit in half a month, I'd make you my squire. You did it. Liam became my personal attendant, my shadow, my human golden retriever with a sword. If I'm the lazy brain of this empire, Liam is the loyal hands. Over the next few years, he'd end up doing 2/3 of my paperwork, just so I could nap with dignity. Best hire I never planned. The voice told me to grab the twins. Liam I found all by myself. I'm learning. Then we built like the war clock was ticking, which it was. I hired an architect to build the castle, a half-elf girl named Seraphina. Cost me 3,500 gold and worth every coin. I drew my sword and slashed her finished wall as hard as I could and left one shallow scratch. That's what expensive looks like. 2 walls, inner and outer, ballistae on the platforms, water storage, grain stores, and, because I asked, a 100-square-meter basement, for reasons I kept to myself. Seraphina, it turned out, wasn't just an architect. She could inscribe magic circles. She could even do a little magic, which she demonstrated by summoning a flame so weak I could have blown it out with one breath. 5 stars for the light show, Seraphina. She was fishing, obviously. She was contracted to serve me 10 years for her freedom, and she desperately wanted a permanent post instead of wasting her best decade as a hired builder. I could see the anxiety on her. I just wasn't ready to promise anyone anything. Judge a person by more than their words. Watch who they surround themselves with. So I smiled, took the castle, and made no promises. The half-elf's face fell a little. Business is business. By the time the walls went up, I'd promoted my whole knight roster to silver. Magical treasures do that. Every loyal man got a 7-colored flower of life to break through. Then I stationed everyone on jobs. Kalen patrolling, Finian guarding the salt, Theron mining mithril fast before an accident happened. Ronan stripping the land bare of food in a 10-kilometer scorched earth ring. Everyone had a lane, and I had exactly one problem I could not solve with money or muscle. I needed a nerd. Every meeting was me explaining basic administration to a room full of swords. I planned the farmland, the tax rates, the soldier pay, the sanitation law, the flood management. All of it. Alone. I was the only person in a 1,000-mile radius who understood a fish pond. I'd lie on the carpet after every meeting, mentally exhausted, staring at my own blueprints, thinking one desperate thought over and over. I have to find someone who does internal affairs, or these muscle brains are going to kill me with follow-up questions. A whole army of biceps and not one accountant. The pressure was immense, but the fortress was rising. The salt was flowing. The serfs were becoming soldiers, the soldiers becoming knights, the dirt becoming a town I named Qixing Town. And out west, a one-armed gnoll was leading a river of monsters straight toward my brand new home. The clock was at 6 months and counting. Then the voicemail changed the plan, because of course it did. New month, new call. And this one was a fork in the road. 7 days out, a legendary sorceress from outer space was going to fall out of the sky into Gray Mist Mountain north of my lake. Save her, said the voice, and I'd get her protection for 30 years. A legendary. In this world, that's a walking natural disaster. 30 years of one owing me a favor is the kind of insurance you can't buy. Problem. The gnolls were finally leaving, heading south out of the province, and the one-armed chief was moving his treasure north. I couldn't be in 2 places. North for the space wizard, or stay for the treasure. I sat with it for exactly 1 minute. 30 years of legendary protection beats 1 payday. North it is. So I rode to Gray Mist Mountain with 6 silver knights, 12 squires, and all my 7-colored flowers, just in case. I closed my eyes, followed the light in my chest, and pointed. Northwest, 2 kilometers. Then I made everyone back off several hundred meters, because when reality tears open to spit out a legendary, you do not want to be standing in the splash zone. Space cracked. A woman in torn robes got vomited out of the sky and landed on the ground. Silver hair, devastating face, figure that made me swallow hard, right up until I remembered she could probably turn me to ash by sneezing. So, eyes up, Valerius. I crept over with a 7-colored flower. A pale blue shield flickered on her and vanished. Right, High mages set defensive shields to auto-detect attacks, so if I'd had any bad ideas just then, I'd currently be a stain. I hypnotized myself real hard. I'm here to save people, purely medical. The shield dropped. I fed her the flower, it turned to green liquid, and it slid into her. Then I sat down beside a sleeping legendary and waited, shameless as a man at a bus stop. And that's when a squire came sprinting up with the worst possible news. 300 gnolls, heading right for us. Because the one-armed chief had circled back. His name was Grok. He'd lost an arm somewhere in this campaign, and losing an arm makes a gnoll take things personally. He'd been sneaking north with his best men and his treasure, and then his scouts spotted a human camp flying my banner. The banner of the outpost that had ruined his whole year. "Full speed," said Grok. "I'm going to collect some interest." My people at the camp bailed and ran up the mountain to me. They ditched the supplies and kept the horses. Hundreds of gnolls poured in behind them. We formed up around the sleeping wizard. 7 silver knights, a dozen squires, and 1 legendary who was picking the worst possible moment to sleep in. Grok rode out between his lines on the back of a bigger gnoll, one arm gone, face gone full crazy, promising to salt me and eat me slowly. Great. Motivational. Let's not. I made the call. Squires back, protect yourselves. 6 silvers on me, and we go straight for the one-armed idiot. Cut off the head, scatter the body, buy and escape. We charged. I split 3 gnolls at the waist, and the war started for real. Then more gnolls poured in, and more, and the 7 of us got separated. Grok, being not completely stupid, threw all his high bronze gnolls at me specifically and put a bounty on my limbs. 20 gold a leg, 50 an arm. The mob went blood drunk. Every swing I killed a gnoll. Every gnoll I killed, 2 more showed up. That's the thing about being the main target. It's very flattering right up until it's fatal. So I did the math. I couldn't win this on swords. I needed the legendary to wake up. And she was taking her sweet time. She woke up. I'll spare you the part where a very annoyed space wizard, freshly saved and freshly interrupted, opened her eyes on 300 gnolls trying to butcher her rescuer. The one-armed revenge tour ended right there. Grok spent his whole arc plotting his comeback, and the universe answered by dropping a legendary on his head like a piano. His grudge got repaid, all right. Just not to me. 30 years of protection, 1 dead gnoll chief, and a very handsome new ally who now owed me her life. Best commute I ever made. With the war clock ally locked in, I got a bonus round. A really weird one. Remember those 2 mystery spheres the slave merchant paid me with? They led me to a man named Xylo. And Xylo was not from around here. Xylo was from everywhere. A plane-hopping plant collector, 1,500 years into a 100-year vacation, who wandered universes gathering rare flora for his personal garden and doing some business with the locals. To him, my entire world was a nice place he'd rank in his top 3, full of beings stronger than me, plus a legendary nearby he could easily crush. Casual. He traded in points, and he had a catalog. I'm a lazy man who got reborn into a fantasy war, so obviously the first thing I bought from an interdimensional god merchant was a video game console. An immersive gaming helmet, bronze rank, built-in single-player games. Described in the catalog, and I quote, as a possible child's toy. Highly addictive, requires self-control, use with caution. I bought 2. 1 to use, 1 as backup, because when will I ever meet a reality-traveling shopkeeper again? Xylo approved of my logic. Then I spent the rest on green vine trees, magical plants that would matter a great deal later, and I let the old traveler tell me stories about 1,000 worlds. His fairy attendant watched me the whole time, like I was a stray cat her master had adopted. She asked him after I left why he bothered with an ordinary human. "He's no ordinary man," Xylo said. "I saw destiny in him." Then he opened a portal and dropped me and Liam 300 kilometers home in one hop. I stood there looking at my own town. A plant nerd from beyond the stars had just called me chosen. No pressure. And the space wizard I saved? She stuck around. Her name was Isolde. She didn't just owe me 30 years and leave. She built an ice fortress on the frozen northern edge of my land and moved in. A whole castle of ice, staffed by ice elves and ice elementals, guarded by frost soldiers strong enough that I couldn't even read their rank. My territory now had a live-in legendary, a guardian goddess with a maid staff and a throne made of ice. I once had to ride an ice-forged carriage up to her castle just to apologize. My men had accidentally started harvesting a rare frost plant on her private land. She waved it off, told me to help myself. Then she coolly walked me through 3 separate theories on how a doomsday cult might be brewing the coming famine. Casual doomsday consultation over fruit tea in a palace of ice. My life is very normal. Oh, and I got pets out of the wars, too. The best pets. Remember the mithril mine? 2 baby rock giant lizards had wandered in and started munching the ore, which made their scales harder than armor. My knight Theron fought them, barely dented them, nearly panicked. Grown adults of that species hit gold rank and stand 16 meters tall. But these 2 were babies. So instead of killing them, I kept them, fed them, and they imprinted on me like enormous stone puppies. Now, when I come home, 2 monsters the size of wagons come sprinting across the field, tails wagging, howling for head pats. So fat, I told one, scratching its skull. Looks like the food's good. It howled happily. I don't have guard dogs. I have guard dinosaurs, and they love me. Back to the Empire, where a much bigger war was already loading, because the dragon fight the voicemail warned me about had gone off, and it had shaken loose a monster alliance the size of a natural disaster. 4 armies, 4 routes, aimed at the human kingdom. And the mastermind running the smart one was a half-dragon commander named Draxus, a soul-intent powerhouse with 5 soul rings. Subtle, vicious, and increasingly cranky because the border kept holding. Here's the funny part. Their own prophet had told them one thing: never, ever attack Cardero province. There are gods watching there, multiple gods. So Draxus roped off my little province as a no-go zone, pulled every strong monster out of it, and threw them at other fronts as cannon fodder. He even benched the Goblin King, canceled the Goblin Uprising I'd been warned about, and shipped that guy to the farthest corner of the war. The exact uprising the voice told me was coming. A year out, southern Cardero. It just evaporated, because the monster's own prophet was scared of the same thing protecting me. I don't know who the gods watching my province are, but I'd like to formally thank them for the free defense. Meanwhile, the kingdom handed me a real assignment. Go hold a hill. Lumen's South Mountain, the south border, 6,000 men, build a mud fortress and be a second-line unit. And right on schedule, the voice paid its rent. A drought was coming. 2 years, 8 provinces, nearly 4 million square kilometers of famine. So while the kingdom found out about the drought the slow way, I already knew. And a man who knows about a famine 2 years early does one thing. He buys grain. Quietly. Constantly. Before the price knows what's about to hit it. My steward, Kalen, got a letter that said, "Drought is coming. Prepare." He looked out at the best harvest year in memory. Then he slowly realized his lazy lord had been hoarding food for a reason. I turned a 2-year famine into a 2-year population magnet and a fat war chest, and I never lifted anything heavier than a pen. Disaster is just a discount if you get the memo early. Then the monster wave hit my hill. And it came wearing a plague. The genius Draxus had a plan to sneak an army north into the neighboring province without technically breaking the god rule. He needed a volunteer for this suicide mission. Every monster commander at the meeting took a giant step backward. Doing a good job earns no reward. Failing earns the wrath of a legendary. The only one who didn't step back fast enough was a rat-man wizard named Fimble, who had proposed the plan in the first place purely to look clever. Congratulations, Fimble. You suggested it. You're leading it. Fimble tried everything to wriggle out. We rat-men are weak, more than suitable for cannon fodder, but this crucial mission is beneath us. Draxus found Fimble physically disgusting, so he assigned him 2 gold-rank half-dragon babysitters. Their orders were to kill him the instant he tried to run. So Fimble marched on my hill at the head of 5,000 mismatched throwaways and 3,000 of his own rats, admiring what he thought was his masterpiece. His masterpiece was 4,000 sick cannon fodder, deliberately infected with plague potion, meant to pollute my fortress with disease before the real assault. 10,000 monsters at the foot of my hill, 2 half-dragons, and me, holding a mud castle with 100 officers and a second-line garrison that had never fought anything scarier than a goblin. So, I did the only thing that works when everyone's terrified. I planted my sword in the table and told them the truth. I'd already sent word to the commander. Hold a few days, help comes. A monster army this size, the province and the kingdom would not sit still. And danger comes with opportunity. Hold this line, and you don't just survive, you get promoted. You get war merits. You get rich. Then I promised the one thing a soldier actually needs to hear. In this defense, I will stand in the most dangerous place and fight beside you. If I ever run, turn your weapons on me and kill me. The room went quiet. Then a centurion stood up, said my reputation was fair and I never played favorites, and he'd fight beside me and die if he fled. Then another stood. Then all of them. 100 terrified men swearing to hold a mud hill against 10,000 monsters because their lord promised to bleed in the front row with them. Fear is heavy. Someone has to lift it first. That someone is always the guy in charge. And then the sick cannon fodder came screaming up the hill. The real war began. Here's how you hold a mud fortress against 10,000 monsters. You be boring on purpose. Fimbul's plague plan needed his infected fodder to reach my walls and bleed on them, so they never reached my walls. Priests soaked our arrows in holy water. Archers lit the night with holy light, and every diseased goblin caught fire before it got close enough to sneeze on anyone. His masterpiece burned in the field. 0 out of 10. Would not recommend the welcome package. Fimbul watched his big idea fail from the back, on his rat, where cowards do their best work. And he had a bigger problem than me. 2 gold-rank half-dragons standing behind him, waiting for him to twitch the wrong way. He was trapped between my hill and his own bodyguards. Nowhere to run. The most miserable middle manager in the entire war. We held. Days of it. I stood in the front row like I'd promised, sword in the worst place. My terrified garrison watched their lord bleed beside them, and they decided they'd rather die than be the first to run. That's the whole trick. Courage is contagious if you catch it from the top. And then, right as advertised, the cavalry came. My own commander, the province, the kingdom, none of them were going to let a 10,000 monster army sit on the border and pick its teeth. Help arrived. The wave broke. The hill held. And I walked out of that mud fortress a hero, which was the entire point. But here's the funniest part of the whole war. The reason it ended. The entire Monster Alliance, the biggest army the continent had seen in ages, had mobilized on one piece of information. That the goddess of life had been badly wounded in a battle out in space, leaving the human kingdoms exposed. That intel came from the famine cult. And the famine cult was lying. The goddess of life hadn't been wounded. She'd won. She beat the god of famine out in the stars and came home fine. So the monster commander Draxus got the real news, stood up in his war tent, and announced that the whole invasion was off. Retreat, immediately, and prepare to eat humanity's revenge for a war they'd started over a rumor. The monster leaders lost their minds. They'd thrown clans into the meat grinder for nothing. One Minotaur charged the commander to scream about it. He got punched clean out of the tent, through 3 watchtowers, killing a pile of his own troops on the way down. And the Ratman wizard? Fimbul? He'd finally completed his precious soul swap upgrade at the cost of his most valuable artifact and came crawling back to report it. Draxus took one look at him, decided the new soul didn't fit the body, and had him beheaded on the spot. His head went up on a pole next to another half-dragon's as decoration. Fimbul volunteered for the clever mission to look smart. He ended his arc as a lawn ornament. The biggest army in living memory, undone by a cult's fake news and a goddess who was perfectly fine. War is stupid. I love watching it be stupid from a fortified hill. And I wasn't the only one of my people fighting that season, because somewhere else on that front, a knight named Briar fought her own nightmare. Briar's a high-rank silver, a fierce woman tied to my family, and her camp got hit by a horde of half-demons led by a monster called Silver Peak. This thing was 3 meters of dark muscle that ate soldiers whole, wood chips and armor included, and it wanted to eat Briar specifically. Devouring a silver knight would evolve it to gold. It cornered her, shattered her shield in 3 seconds, broke her bones, ruptured her insides, and closed in for the bite. She pulled off her bloody visor and made peace with dying ugly, wondering if my little brats would even find her bones. Then the gray cross badge in her arms lit up, and dawn arrived early. A beam of pure light fell out of the sky, wrapped them both, and in under 2 seconds, the shrieking half-demon simply ceased to exist. And Briar, one breath from death, felt like she'd fallen back into her mother's arms. Her ruptured organs healed, her broken bones knit, her scars closed. She looked up at the stars and realized she'd survived. The god of dawn had cashed a favor at the last possible second. This world runs on last-second divine bailouts, and honestly, so does my whole business model. Then came my favorite part of any war, the part where they hand out prizes. Because war, for a pioneer, isn't just survival. It's a promotion ladder made of corpses. I'd held a key border hill, thwarted a monster commander's clever plan, and stacked up a mountain of military merit. And here's the part I'd planned 2 years earlier from bed. Everyone else spent the famine starving. I spent it fat. I'd hoarded grain before the price knew a drought was coming. So while 8 provinces went hungry, my territory ate, and grew, and swallowed up every desperate free man looking for a lord who could feed them. War merit in one hand, a population boom in the other, and I never got up early once. At the reward ceremony, I got a token, 2 merits, and a nickname, the Child of Frost, which I found deeply embarrassing and my uncles found hilarious. 2 merits sounds tiny, and it was. I was still 28 merits short of Viscount, a mountain of a climb. But grizzled barons who'd fought for decades had less than I'd earned in 1 season, so I'll take the embarrassing Frost nickname and shut up. The ceremony also came with a bulk delivery of people. A commander named Ranulph, an old flag-bearer who'd served beside my father 30 years ago, pulled me aside. He had 30,000 refugees on his hands, abandoned by dead pioneers, and nowhere to put them. How many could I take? I wanted all of them. But 30,000 starving mouths would have killed my lake overnight. So I took 10,000. 10,000 free hands, delivered to my door in the middle of the famine I'd stocked grain for. Everyone else saw a refugee crisis. I saw a hiring event, and my uncles thanked me, genuinely, because that boring letter I'd sent telling them to stockpile grain, it had saved them a fortune. I'd assumed the kingdom's relief food would cover everyone. My Uncle Eldred shook his head at how naive I was. Relief food costs money. And without a bribe, he explained, the relief food tends to quietly vanish somewhere on the road. So my little heads up hadn't just saved them coin, it saved them from a disaster the kingdom was theoretically fixing and practically ignoring. Turns out the scariest famine isn't the weather, it's the paperwork. And in a quiet tent afterward, I asked Liam a real question. Did he want to stay glued to me as my attendant, or go lead troops of his own? Leading troops means glory, fame, power, a name of his own. Staying at my side means none of that. He dropped to a knee before I'd finished. I am willing to follow and serve you until the end of my life. I looked at this boy I'd pulled out of serfdom and told him the plain truth. Get up. My back is now in your hands. He stood and smiled like I'd handed him a title instead of a burden. You can't buy that either. I keep saying it because I keep being amazed by it. Do the math with me. A famine is a disaster if you find out with everyone else. It's a land grab if you find out first. I had a voicemail. I found out first. Every single time. So let me show you what first every time builds. Because while I was off holding hills, my lake had been quietly turning into a kingdom. I came home to a territory I barely recognized. My knight roster, the 12 muscle men Dad loaned me, had each gone off and built. Finian took 400 square kilometers of empty dirt and turned it into 2,500 in a year and a half. Villages everywhere, some with only a dozen people, planted purely to plant a flag. 30,000 new souls. My original 15 people had become tens of thousands, and I'd bought most of them with the disaster nobody else saw coming. And then there was Kalen. Every year I ran a competition. My knights split into teams, each got resources, and whoever built the most and the best by year's end won a prize. Pure capitalism. And every year, the same thing happened. Caspian, my fire twin, is a monster of talent. He built a whole town from scratch, no training, natural leader, and I renamed it Caspian Town in his honor. And then Kalen, my supposed muscle-brained knight captain, quietly outbuilt him anyway. with darker eye bags than a raccoon and a report so detailed it made grown knights nervous. I declared Kalen the winner. Nobody argued. You can't argue with a man who found the ice-blue grass that became the economic backbone of my entire territory while everyone else was flexing. The muscle had a brain the whole time. I just had to hand it a spreadsheet. By now, the empire had a real shape. 3 towns: Qixing Town, Caspian Town, and a gorgeous new one on a lake so blue Finian named it Blue Gauze Town. Plus a couple of buffer zones I left to fend for themselves. Salt flowing, mithril flowing, ice-blue grass potions flowing, a population climbing toward the tens of thousands. And every loyal knight I had was now a silver, powered up on the 7-colored flowers I kept handing out like a rich uncle at a birthday party. Prove your loyalty and value, and you get a flower, talent or no talent. Loyalty is the only currency I never let inflate. And then I got a new toy, my favorite one. Remember Xylo's green vine trees? And that immersive gaming helmet from Beyond the Stars? I'd been quietly building an entire private setup, a virtual space where I could run management simulations and war games in my head, powered by magic plants, no crystals required. A lazy man's dream. Play strategy games all evening, wake up a better lord. Cultivate in the morning, paperwork in the afternoon, video games at night. Character progression, but it's my actual life. But the toy that made me squeal wasn't the helmet. It was the birds. My attendant Liam walked in one day carrying 3 baby griffins, except these weren't normal griffins. Snow-white feathers, ice-blue crystal wings, ice crystal pupils, mutated. More majestic than any griffin in the kingdom and small enough to hold in one hand. I picked one up, felt the cool feathers, and immediately wanted to bury my face in it. I'd been a little prejudiced about the ugly hatchlings. Then they grew up gorgeous, and I started daydreaming about riding one. My own aerial knights, hatching in a shed, eating dried pork, hissing at their confused new dad. I looked one baby griffin dead in the eyes and told it the future of my Air Force depended on its love life. It tilted its head and hissed. Motivational speech received, probably. Then the invitations came. Both uncles, Eldrin and Eldred, were getting promoted to Viscount, and they were throwing a joint banquet. 2 more Viscounts for the family. And formal banquets always end with a spectator duel. Each lord shows off his best fighters. It's a flex, wrapped in wine, disguised as a party. I asked Kalen who I should send. He said Caspian, Silas, and Liam. Young, top tier, and, his best point, showing off talented young men makes every ambitious nobody in the kingdom want to come work for me. Recruitment, disguised as a duel, disguised as a party. Everything at a noble banquet is 3 things pretending to be one. But here's the moment that told me who I really was as a lord. The unwritten rule caps each family at 3 duelists. I gave 2 spots to the Caspian brothers, and the last spot I handed to my original 12 knights to fight over among themselves, because those 12 had been with me since day 1, digging rivers and holding hills, and I owed them the stage. Liam, my shadow, quietly noted that by staying glued to my side, he'd miss every one of those chances himself. I told him he could still choose differently. Go be a hero somewhere. Since I chose to stay by your side, I won't change my choice, he said. I'll always stand beside you, unless one day I fall. You don't buy that. You earn it, 1 honest year at a time. I told the human golden retriever to come on home. So that's the middle of the story. A lazy 5th son with a horoscope had turned 100 kilometers of goblin dirt into an empire. 3 towns, a salt empire, an ice-blue potion industry, a stable of mutated griffins, a legendary bodyguard on retainer, and a night corps that would die on my word. All while getting up as late as possible. But an empire this size gets noticed, and once the wasteland was won, the game changed. It was time to stop being a frontier lord scraping at the edge of the map. It was time to play the whole board. And the first big league move was the most me thing I've ever done. I didn't attack a rival. I went shopping for an employee. His name was Evander, a temple knight of the goddess of life, the single best knight instructor in the region. He'd trained more talent than anyone alive, and he had 0 interest in serving a lord. My ice twin, Silas, had dueled him once and lost so badly it rebuilt the kid's entire personality. I wanted this man teaching my knights, so I hatched a plan. And my plan was gloriously overcomplicated, because a simple offer wouldn't work on a man who'd turned down lords for 30 years. Step 1. I recruited my territory's only priest, a bald, wine-loving, gloriously naive man named Elion. He spent his days weeding a vegetable garden and buying wine. He genuinely believed he was too dim to teach, because his own teacher once told him he'd mislead students. I offered to build him a whole priest academy and make him the principal. He teared up, said I was the first person besides his family to believe in him. I felt a little guilty about that, because Elion was not the point. Elion was the delivery vehicle. Step 2. I told sweet, honest Elion that he'd need to go recruit more priests, and that he should ask a wise, high-character temple knight named Evander for help finding good ones. Which was true. It was also bait. And Elion, bless his bald head, couldn't spot a foxtail if it was tied to his own belt. He patted his chest and swore he'd go. Step 3. I sent my ice twin Silas along to keep the priest from getting lost. Silas wanted nothing on this earth more than a rematch with Evander, and he had no idea he was a chess piece. So both of my pawns walked into the mission thinking they were the main character. Neither knew he was scenery. That's how audacious the scheme was. Use two clueless, honest men to gently court a man too smart for a direct pitch. It's not manipulation, it's aggressive networking. And it worked, mostly, because Evander turned out to be exactly the man I'd bet on. My pawns found him at home, carrying groceries, cooking lunch for 6 adopted children, while a little girl handed him fruit. This legendary knight, the terror of dueling arenas, in an apron. Here's Evander's whole life, and it's the reason I wanted him, and the reason he was so hard to get. He'd been born into a rotten Earl family, 50 years. The first 20 he lived inside their conspiracies. The next 20 he lived in guilt over them, and only the last 10 had been his own, quiet, in a small house, raising orphans, occasionally guiding a promising kid. A man who'd been burned so badly by power that all he wanted left was to cook dinner for 6 children and be left alone. Naturally, he clocked my scheme immediately. He's not naive, he's just tired. Chopped his vegetables a little harder and hoped he was overthinking it. He wasn't. But he agreed to help the priest anyway, and he gave Silas his rematch, because that's the kind of man he is. And that's the kind of man you don't just hire, you have to earn. I'd get there, eventually, because while I was busy poaching one grocery-carrying knight, I'd tripped over a 200-year-old murder mystery. See, I'd gone digging into Evander's past. Where'd he come from? Why'd he ditch his family name 30 years ago? The official story was garbage, some nonsense about his mistress having an affair and him leaving in shame. A man of that character, a temple knight, running off over gossip? Please. So Liam and I went to the old family's territory to poke around, the Dreisel family. And their territory was a horror show. Starving serfs, whip-happy officials, decadent nobles. The exact opposite of everything I'd built. Instant, instinctive disgust. We stopped at a village and met the chief, an old man named Elias. And old Elias was not what he seemed. I asked him about the past. He played senile. Bad memory, failing eyes, the whole act. So I flicked my sword next to his ear, just to test. He flinched with the reflexes of a trained soldier. Muscle memory, he said. 20 years in the Lord's army. Then I did the math out loud. If you enlisted at 20 and retired at 40, and you're 70 now, those reflexes should have rusted 3 decades ago. Old Elias stopped smiling. I slammed him to the ground with my aura, asked for his story, and got nothing. He'd rather die than talk. That's not a senile village chief. That's a man guarding a secret with his life. A 30-year secret. And 30 years was exactly when Evander vanished. Connection? Almost certainly. I sent Liam to find out if old Elias had descendants and whether they were blood. And I'll tell you what the secret was because it's the good stuff. Old Elias wasn't guarding a thing. He was guarding a girl, Evander's dead sister's daughter, the true heir of that rotten family, hidden away in a valley since childhood, protected by a network of loyalists who passed messages by feeding sealed notes to a trained, red-headed raven. 200 years ago, a traitor had usurped their line, and this girl was the rightful liege, waiting to set it right. Old Elias died getting his last warning out, because two strange silver-rank knights had wandered into his village. Us. He thought we were the traitor's new hunters, and he spent his life to protect her trail. His last note begged her to come home and finish what was started. She read it and cried and swore fresh hatred at the usurper. And I, the actual reason he died, was just a guy trying to hire a good tutor. Whoops. And I hadn't even met the worst player yet, because there were 3 factions in this valley, not 2. Faction 1, the traitor family's Black Crow army hunting the heir. Faction 2, the heir's loyalists, led by a knight named Conrad, protecting her. And Faction 3, the fun one, a cult called the Withered Order, run by a one-armed madman who worshipped a god of withering. He kept a pet ghoul, fed it maggot-ridden meat, and called it my darling. A man so unstable he throttled his own terrified spy. The crime? Not being sure enough. Every villain in this arc had a one-armed guy. I'm starting to think it's a regional dress code. All 3 thought Liam and I were spies for one of the others, so all 3 started watching us. And I did the only smart thing a man can do when 3 armies think he's the enemy. I left the city, let them think I was fleeing, and camped in the mountains where an ambush made sense. Then I waited to see who'd show. Everyone showed. And then something beautiful happened. They didn't attack me. They attacked each other. The Black Crows, the Loyalists, and the Ghoul cult all converged on the same spot at the same time to bag the same 2 spies. Instead, they ran headfirst into their real enemies. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Except in this case, there were 3 mantises, and I was the oriole. I got to sit on a hill with Liam and watch a 500-body 3-way bloodbath unfold in the valley below. Liam gripped his sword, itching to jump in and finish the survivors. I held him back. Then a reserve army showed up. Then reinforcements. These old snakes had backup for their backup. Insidious. So I did the responsible thing. I got out before I accidentally became a body in someone else's civil war. And then I did the fun thing. I disguised myself and went back, which mostly meant painting my horse. My red dragon blood war horse, Little Red, did not enjoy becoming a gray horse. I brushed light gray paint over his gorgeous scales. He looked at his reflection in the river, deeply betrayed, and tried to jump in and drown the evidence. My paint job was, admittedly, ugly. Liam sighed, took the bowl, and repainted the horse properly, and Little Red immediately started nuzzling Liam instead of me. Even my horse likes my attendant more than me. This animal has no idea what he's worth. We stashed our weapons and dressed as low-level adventurers. Then we slipped back into the misty city, 2 nobodies in a crowd, while 3 secret armies bled each other white looking for us. The valley behind us went quiet. 500 or 600 dead, and not one of the 3 factions could remember by the end what they'd even come there to do. They'd gotten so busy killing each other that the whole point evaporated, which, honestly, is most wars. That's the thing about playing the whole board. Sometimes the smartest move isn't a move at all. It's letting the other players punch themselves out while you repaint your horse and take notes. I came for a tutor. I left with a conspiracy, 3 enemy factions who'd never find me, and a very grumpy gray horse. And back home, my empire kept quietly compounding without me, like interest on a loan nobody remembered taking. But the frontier and the intrigue were just the warm-up, because the last biggest game wasn't fought with swords at all. It was fought with grain and gold, and a war I saw coming from 1,000 kilometers away. But before the money, there was family. And I'll be honest, this is the part I wasn't ready for. My empire had grown big enough to reach the wider world, and the wider world is where my family lives. So I traveled to a war front in Danny Province, a giant military camp on the southwestern border, and I went looking for my older brother, Alaric, the heir, the one Dad was grooming to run the whole 700-year machine. I found him, and he'd changed. The brother I remembered hated the idea of an arranged marriage. This version had made peace with it, was even looking forward to it. He'd gotten calmer, sharper, more like Dad every year. And then he helped me onto my horse, just like he did when I was small and he first taught me to ride. Same hand on the saddle. A decade later, exact same gesture. I stood there like an idiot for a second, because some things don't change even when everything else does. His tent was guarded by 24 masked female swordsmen, all silver rank, all assassin grade. A gift from our great-granduncle. Alaric, being a good brother, immediately offered to give me 12 of them, then 6 of them, unmasked, gorgeous, on the spot. I said no. I'd rather train my own people than be handed someone else's. He rolled his eyes and said I was ambitious and picky, which, fair. Then he asked what I actually came for, and I told him the truth. Make money, a lot of money. He didn't blink, poured 2 glasses, we drank them dry, and he said, "Tell me what you need." No demand for proof. No, how could you possibly know? Because my brother had heard about Silver Star City 5 years ago, and about the goblins in the wasteland a year ago. He'd connected the dots on his weird little brother long before I opened my mouth. He just chose to believe me. So here was the plan, the big one. 5 months out, during the Third Iceland War, the Cube Kingdom was going to get demolished. I'd heard it from the voice. And a kingdom that loses a war suddenly needs to buy everything. Food, crystals, weapons, all of it, at any price, right now. So I wanted Alaric to quietly work the family's allied merchants across 5 provinces. Buy supplies cheap in the peaceful north. Stockpile them. And when Kube came crawling with a war chest and no options, sell it all back to them at whatever number we wanted. Each company takes a cut as an information fee. Nobody knows the information came from a voice in my soul. It's insider trading, on a war, with a kingdom as the mark. Alaric thought for a second, then asked why I hadn't told Dad instead of him. And this is the part that got me. I said Dad was going to be slammed all year with some Duke's crisis, and I didn't want to add to his load. My brother looked at me a little differently after that. Then he laid out the whole network. 5 provinces, a dozen forces, a paper trail traced back to Dad and other counts, so nothing pointed at me. 2 months, he said. He'd have it done in 2 months at most. You just wait to collect the money. I lay on the table like a cat in a sunbeam and told him I trusted him not to betray me. He said we were brothers, no need for thanks. His eyes went soft. He only shows that side to the people he loves. And I realized my scary, competent older brother had just become one more genius doing my work while I napped. My whole life is a machine for delegating to people better than me. I've made peace with it. We drank and talked and roasted each other like brothers do. He threatened to tell Dad I'd been mouthing off. I threatened to just never go home so Dad couldn't beat me. He put his hand on my head, the way he used to, and said, "Everything else has changed. This one thing hasn't." And I let myself enjoy it, because who knows what any of us turns into later. Our 4th brother went off pioneering 10 years ago, quiet and gentle. He came back worldly and ruthless. Growing up does that. But that night, for a few hours, we were just 2 boys and a bottle of wine. Then the next morning, he dragged me to meet the terrifying part of the family. Great-granduncle Octavian, Count Hurricane. A soul-intent knight, 230 years old, who looks like he's in his 30s, guarding the beating heart of the family's war camp. His tent had a guard every 5 steps and a gold-rank swordsman at the door. And the old man himself saw straight through me the second I walked in. I tried the polite, innocent, "Oh, great-granduncle, whatever do you mean?" act. He shut it down instantly. "You little rascal, these tricks are useless on me." Then he laughed, said I was more fun than my older brother, which made Alaric roll his eyes. Then he gave me a present that made my brother's jaw drop. 2 shadow guards. Elite killers, each at least gold rank with dual professions, from a corps of only 81. He's got new recruits not yet branded with his mark, and he'd send me 2 of his personally chosen geniuses. And he leaned in, dead serious, and warned me. "I spent a fortune on these kids. Mess them up and I'll beat your backside to a pulp. Yes, great-granduncle, I will guard your murder prodigies with my life." That afternoon I toured the Hurricane Legion, and I got hungry. 30,000 soldiers split into 6 battalions, each battalion a single element. 5,000 wind attribute warriors moving in perfect sync, no leader needed, every man elite. 1 battalion could smash a regular kingdom army 10 times its size. I stood at the fence drooling like a kid at a bakery window. My whole empire and I still don't have anything like this. The old man told me the family's legions were built by pooling everyone's strength. A gentle way of saying, "Don't get too big for your britches, kid. This took 100 years and everyone's blood. And I nodded, and I meant no disrespect, but I clenched my fists and thought the exact opposite. One day I'll build a legion like this, alone, with no one's strength but my own and a voice from the future. Octavian didn't scold me for it. He smiled and said, "You've got ambition. I look forward to the day you succeed." That's the difference between a great elder and a small one. The small one crushes the ambition. The great one waters it. And those 2 shadow guards he gave me were no small gift. My brother nearly fell over. The old man's corps has only 81 official members. Each one is gold rank. Each one holds 2 professions. There are 300 more in reserve, mostly silver. Compare that to my father, who runs 600 shadow stalkers, the strongest at soul intent. Between them, my family quietly fields more elite killers than most kingdoms field knights. And the great-granduncle handed me 2 of his personally groomed prodigies like party favors, with a warning to treat them well or get my backside beaten. I'd stumbled into a level of the family I'd never even seen from the inside. Then he let me tour his legion, and I've never been so jealous in my life. 30,000 soldiers, 6 battalions, each a single pure element. 5,000 wind warriors moving as one body, no leader, no wasted motion. Every man elite enough to be an officer anywhere else. 10 squads to a company, 5 companies to a battalion, a gold rank commander at the top of each. One battalion could shatter a regular kingdom army 10 times its size. I stood at the fence and physically drooled. My whole empire, everything I'd bled for, and I still didn't have one battalion like this. But I clenched my fists and made the promise anyway. One day, alone, with no one's strength but mine. And at the end of the night, I did something I'd never done in my whole life. I gave my brother a gift. A Sacred Heart moonflower, glowing faintly with life, something I'd earned with my own hands. Alaric stared at it like he didn't recognize me. "I've grown up," he said quietly. "I've really grown up." The lazy 5th son nobody bet on, handing the family heir a treasure and telling him not to look down on it. He didn't look down on it. He carried it back to his tent and held it to the light. That's the thing nobody tells you about building an empire. You think it's about land and armies and gold. And it is. But the day you can finally give something back to the people who carried you when you were nothing, that's the day you know you actually made it. The scheme was in motion. The brothers were aligned. The great-granduncle was watching, amused. And somewhere across the map, the Cube Kingdom was marching cheerfully toward a war it had exactly 0 chance of winning. All I had to do now was wait to get rich, but waiting is boring. So let me back up and show you what the empire actually became while I was scheming. Because a country isn't built in one montage. It's built in 100 small ones. Start with the wars. Because there were a lot of them, and they all followed one rule. I never fought a fight I hadn't already won on paper. Take the monster wave that hit my lake early on. The gnolls. Hundreds of them, funneling toward my brand new territory. A normal frontier lord panics. I didn't. I'd known for 6 months, so by the time they arrived, my hill wasn't a village. It was a fortress. Triple bow ballistae on the walls, mithril weapons in every hand, every scrap of food inside the walls, nothing left outside for the enemy to eat. Scorched earth for 10 kilometers. I turned my home into a meat grinder and let the monsters walk into the blades. Preparation isn't glamorous, it just wins. That's the whole trick of my life, honestly. Everyone else fights the war. I fight the 6 months before the war. By the time the swords come out, the fun part's already over. Then there was the door in the ground. Remember the teleport array the lying goblin coughed up? The one leading down to an underground world called Colorado? It recharged every 6 months, opened a 2-way passage, and connected my little territory to an entire subterranean civilization. Most lords would panic about a monster highway under their feet. I looked at it and saw a trade route. And a very fancy welcome mat. I sealed it, marked it, guarded it, and filed it under Future Business Opportunity, Do Not Lose. Because in my world, the scariest thing you can find is a stranger's front door. And the most valuable thing you can find is a stranger's front door. Same door. Depends who knocks. And speaking of doors in the ground, the voice showed me a bigger one, and I turned it into the pettiest, most beautiful long con of my career. The voicemail told me that 3 years out, a natural spatial passage would tear open in Maple Leaf County, the capital of a duke, connecting straight to the underground world. Now, a passage to the underworld means one thing: adventurers. Thousands of them, flooding in to explore, and every one of them needs a bed, a drink, a healing potion, and a snack. 3 years early, the smart money knew nothing, and I knew exactly where the gold rush would happen. So I went land banking on a prophecy, but carefully, because the Duke there runs the magic scroll trade and the weapon trade, and stepping on a Duke's business gets your assets confiscated with one stamped document. So I stayed out of anything he cared about. I picked the boring, safe industries: inns, taverns, restaurants, healing potions, exploration pets, the stuff that serves broke adventurers, not the stuff that makes a Duke jealous. Then I got sneaky. I sent 6 of my bronze knights into Maple Leaf City under 6 different fake identities, handed each of them gold, told them to go build competing businesses, against each other, in secret, no contact. 6 of my own men quietly buying up shops and houses across a city, all pretending to be strangers, all racing to grab the best spots before the boom. And then, within a year, a merchant would arrive with my token and quietly buy or merge all 6 back into one guild under my control. They didn't fully understand the plan. They didn't need to. They just needed to grab the best real estate in a boomtown 3 years before anyone knew it was a boomtown. That's the whole edge. I don't gamble on the future. I move in first and wait for it to arrive. And if I complete their mission, I promised, every one of those 6 gets the resources to break through to silver. Loyalty program, remember, always paying out. Then the birds grew up, and they were magnificent. Those 3 ugly mutated hatchlings turned into snow-white ice griffins the size of horses, with crystal blue wings that could carry a knight into the sky. My own aerial cavalry, bred from a shed and a lot of dried pork. I'd started with a daydream about riding a pretty bird. I ended with the seed of an air force nobody else on the frontier had. Character progression, but for poultry. Speaking of pets, my 2 rock giant lizards got names: Little White and Little Yellow. 5 years in, they'd grown to 9 meters long, and when they rolled over at my feet, the ground shook. 2 gold-rank apex predators lounging around my castle like house cats, waiting for chin scratches. I have guard dinosaurs with names. My life is very silly, and I regret nothing. And then I built a nerd factory. My best decision. I'd recruited 9 mages, arcanists, druids, elemental casters, and I ran them the same way I ran everything, as a game, a points system. Every mage got a fat task list. Every task was worth points. Points bought rewards. And the big prize, a mermaid pearl, cost 300 of them. The 9 of them nearly climbed over the table when they heard the price. Then they went off and worked themselves half to death for it. In their own words, the spirit of work until you drop dead. I didn't have to motivate them. I just had to dangle a pearl and get out of the way. The star was an old arcanist named Drian, who grabbed 13 tasks and slept about 5 days a month. I gave him one job: turn my 3 crossbows into something terrifying. 7 days later, he called me out to a test field with raccoon eyes and a redesigned ballista, covered in glowing runes, powered by a magic crystal and a warrior's own fighting spirit. 6 soldiers loaded it. 3 warriors channeled power into it, and 9 spears left the machine with a sonic boom and punched through armor plates at 500, 800, 1,500, 2,000, and 3,000 meters. Then buried themselves in a tree 4,000 meters out. 4 kilometers. Supersonic. Anything below gold that catches one of those is simply over. I stood there doing the math in stunned silence. Drian just bowed, exhausted and delighted, and told me not to worry. He could pull another 5 all-nighters, no problem. As long as I live, I will never stop my steps. Sir, please sleep. He would not sleep. I gave up and let the workaholic wizard cook. That's the dream hire. You point him at a problem, hand him a pearl, and try to make him rest before he dies of enthusiasm. I even turned my pork into diplomacy. My black-skinned meat pigs produce cultivation-boosting meat. So when my uncles came to visit, I served it without a word. And I watched their faces cycle from calm to solemn to shock as they realized what they were eating. Then I cut them into the breeding program. They trade me grain, I raise them pigs, Everybody gets stronger. I even taught my cousin Conan how to run a territory, though he mostly dozed off in the middle of my lecture and pretended he hadn't. A country runs on grain, gold, and the occasional nap. I respect the nap. It's my whole brand. And the treasures. Oh, the treasures. Every single month, the voice paid rent. A legendary sorceress dropped from space. Green vine trees from a plane-hopping plant nerd. Mermaid pearls under a distant reef, the kind that push a silver knight into gold. Worthless to me since I'd already broken through, but perfect as gifts. 7 colored professors of life by the boxful, which I handed to loyal knights like party favors. My whole roster went from bronze to silver on those flowers. Prove your loyalty. Get a flower. It was the most generous loyalty program in the kingdom, and it built me an army that would die on a word. And it wasn't all treasure. The voice saved my life on the regular, too. More than once, it told me an ambush was waiting. The very first time I left home, it warned me that my family's oldest enemies, the Hax clan, had hired assassins to jump me on the road. Top killer, high rank silver. Recommendation, detour. So I detoured. Added 200 kilometers to the trip and skipped my own murder entirely. The assassins waited at Sakalos Ridge for a 5th son who never showed. That's the whole cheat in one sentence. Everyone else walks into the trap. I get the memo. Sometimes the voice just handed me future homework. It told me that 3 years out, a natural rift to the underworld would tear open in a distant Dukes County. That's how I knew to go land banking. It told me about mermaid pearls hidden under a far-off reef, the kind that shove a silver knight up to gold. Useless to me since I'd already broken through on my grandpa's treasures, but a perfect gift for a loyal knight. The voice doesn't just make me rich, it makes me the most generous man in the room, because the future keeps handing me things I don't personally need. And when the Doomsday Cult came, I had a legendary on speed dial. When the voice warned that the famine cult was going to trigger a 2-year drought, I rode up to Isolde's ice castle. And I asked her how a cult even pulls that off. She sipped her tea and gave me 3 cold theories. Someone inside the kingdom colluding to blind the church. Someone tearing apart their own pocket dimension for the sacrifice. Or an enemy nation invading and burning its own soldiers as fuel. All horrifying, all useful. Because knowing the shape of a disaster is 90% of surviving it. And I had a legendary consultant, a prophecy, and a warehouse full of grain. The cult never stood a chance against a man who does his reading, which brings me to the family banquet, and a very specific flex. Both my uncles made Viscount, and they threw a joint party, and every noble party ends the same way. A spectator duel. Each family sends its best young fighters to beat each other in front of the whole province. It's a job fair with swords. Show off enough talent, and every ambitious nobody with nowhere to climb comes knocking on your gate instead of someone else's. So I sent my monsters. Caspian, my fire twin, Silas, my ice twin, and I made a point of it. Because the whole world got to watch 2 former starving slaves, the 2 boys I'd pulled out of a sack, stand in a noble arena. And dismantle the pampered heirs of great houses. Every lord in the crowd did the math. That lord takes broken nobodies and turns them into that. Recruitment, disguised as a duel, disguised as a party. Everything at a banquet is 3 things wearing 1 coat. And that banquet gave me a lot more than a recruitment ad. First, it made me a baron, officially. I'd climbed from lazy 5th son to pioneer knight to landed nobleman, and I was now one of only 18 war-eligible noble families in the whole province. My uncles gave speeches about 50 years of struggle to reach Viscount. 50 years. Some families take 5 or 6 generations to make that climb. I did the frontier version in a little over a decade. Because I had a voice, and they didn't. I felt a little guilty about that. Then I got over it. Second, and I did not see this coming, my grandparents showed up. Alistair and Genevieve, a wandering power couple who'd been off adventuring across the continent for 6 years. Grandpa's a monster of strength. Grandma looks like a young woman, acts like a mischievous teenager, and cannot hide a single feeling from family, though she plays ice cold in front of strangers. She pinched my cheek, pretended to be devastated that I'd grown up and stopped being cute. Then tried to spook me by threatening to sick my father on me. I told her I was onto that trick now. She looked genuinely put out. My grandmother, everybody, a centuries-old sorceress with the heart of a prankster. She told me their travel stories in a garden while making the flowers glow, including the one Grandpa desperately did not want told, that on one adventure, a literal fairy had wanted to bear his children. Grandma told this with zero jealousy, like she was discussing the weather. Grandpa suddenly found the ceiling very interesting, and their marriage was completely fine. I love this family. They're unhinged, and they love each other, and they're unhinged about it. Grandpa gave me a belated coming-of-age gift, a spatial ring loaded with rare seeds and fruits, life-extending wheat, anti-aging fruit, a whole better food supply for my territory, plus books, one of them an upgraded version of my own cultivation method. Then the two of them just vanished, teleported off to keep adventuring. My uncles came looking for them 30 seconds later, and I had to explain the two most powerful people at the party had already left the building. Mysterious in, mysterious out. That's the branch of the family I'd never seen from the inside. And third, the banquet had the duels. My favorite flex. 163 fighters, 50 of them silver. And I sent my monsters. My knight Lysander crushed a silver opponent so hard the whole crowd started drooling over him. My other knight Caius did the same. Praying star territory, this frontier nobody suddenly had a name in every noble's mouth. Every lord in the crowd watched former nobodies dismantle their pampered heirs and quietly did the math on where the talent was coming from. Then Silas, my ice twin, drew the final match. Against Evander. Yeah, that Evander. The grocery-carrying tutor I'd been circling. He'd entered the tournament because the lower nobles worship him, and my brother Caspian had specifically arranged for Silas to face a strong opponent, to knock the cockiness out of him. It worked. Silas fought better than I'd ever seen him fight. Light blue and fiery red fighting spirit, blurring too fast for weaker nobles to even watch. For a while, it was genuinely even. And then Evander, 20 years stuck at mid-silver and honed to a razor because of it, said, "Kid, I'm going to speed things up." Then he launched Silas clean out of the ring. Silas got up shaking, not from pain, but from realizing how much the man had been holding back. And instead of sulking, he decided he'd surpass him. The next morning, the boy who was always the last one out of bed was up at dawn, swinging his sword. One loss, and the arrogance was gone, replaced with hunger. That's worth more than a win. Evander took the whole tournament, by the way, beat everyone, which only made me want to hire him more. So that night I finally tried the direct approach. Walked up, introduced myself, started my pitch. He shut me down before I finished the sentence. I have no intention of leaving the church, nor of mentoring anyone. Cold. Final. I smiled, wished him a good evening, and left. And I did not give up, because the strong-willed ones are exactly the ones worth the long game. That refusal is why I ran the whole priest and pawn scheme later. Some people you court with an offer, some you court with patience. He was a patience guy. And back home, all that talent went into the grinder I called winter training. 3,600 soldiers, pulled from 4 different towns, camped together for 3 months. I even fed them special demon energy pork to boost their cultivation. Serfs to soldiers, soldiers to warriors, warriors to knights. A whole society climbing out of the mud, 3 months at a time. And it worked. Talent started flowing to my lake on its own. The best thing money can buy is a reputation that makes talent show up for free. Then, finally, I closed the deal I'd started with a bald priest and a foxtail. Evander, the grocery-carrying temple knight, the best instructor alive. I'd courted him the long way, through pawns and patience. And eventually a man that tired of the world learns to trust. A lord who feeds orphans, cleans his streets, and never lies to his own people is a rare thing. He came. Chief knight instructor of the whole territory, plus his church network as a bonus. The single best hire of my career, and I landed him by never once making a direct offer. Some fish you don't catch. You just make the water nicer than anywhere else and wait. And once a year, I ran the whole thing like a fantasy shareholder meeting. Every knight reported his numbers, square kilometers claimed, villages founded, population absorbed, acres reclaimed, soldiers trained. And I sat in the big chair, chin on my hand, and judged them like a landlord reviewing his monopoly board. The numbers were insane. My fire twin took 400 square kilometers and grew it to 2,500 in 18 months. Kalen ran the home territory to 7 villages and 16,000 people. And the running gag never got old. Kalen, my supposed musclehead, kept quietly outbuilding the certified genius twin. He showed up to every meeting with raccoon eyes and a report so thorough it made the rooms sweat. So I'd declare Kalen the winner, hand his squad a box of magic crystals and armor, and watch my knights split the loot. I did try to cheat once, on Kalen's behalf as a joke, offered to secretly give him the year's supplies so he'd beat Caspian for sure. He stood straight up, horrified, and refused. He'd rather lose honestly than win with a handout. Fine. 50-50 split then, you overachieving raccoon. I renamed a town after Caspian when he earned it, named districts after lakes my knights discovered. Every year the map got more names on it, because a country is really just a bunch of people who each got a piece of it to be proud of. That's the part the war stories skip. Empire isn't just battles. It's paperwork, promotions, and knowing exactly when to let the musclehead win because he earned it fair. So that's the empire, filled in. 3 towns became more. A pond became a country. Serfs became soldiers. Soldiers became knights. Knights became lords of their own districts. Kalen ran it all with raccoon eyes and a genius he'd hidden under a lifetime of muscle. Liam handled 2/3 of my paperwork so I could nap with a clear conscience. Caspian and Silas grew into the men I'd someday hand the future to. And me? I got up late, played my magic video games, fed my griffins, and let the best people I'd ever collected run the machine I designed. That's the secret nobody wants to hear about building a kingdom. The lazier you are, the better your hires have to be. And if your hires are good enough, laziness becomes a management style. I came to this world wanting to do nothing, and I accidentally became very, very good at getting other people to do the nothing for me. At scale, with a flag on top. But the machine was humming now, the talent was hired, the wars were won before they started, and out east, the Cube Kingdom was finally marching into the trap I'd set 5 months and 1 voicemail ago. It was time to collect. On the 15th of December, in the year 9724, it happened, exactly on schedule. The Cube Kingdom sent out a glorious army, 6 Silver Knight legions, 6 Standing legions, 400,000 elite troops marching to the Third Iceland War. And the Isle half-elf kingdom ambushed them. Half the army, gone. 1/3 of their war supplies, destroyed in a single stroke. A kingdom that started the day as a superpower, ended it as a customer. And the news spread like wildfire. Every scavenger nation with a warehouse smelled blood. Ilya, Lekox, Nitz, Spina. All of them sat back and waited for Kub to come knocking. With money, magic crystals, and elemental crystals. Ready to buy survival at any price. Except I'd been buying for 3 months already. Quietly. Across 5 provinces. While the price still thought it was peacetime. My brother's Chamber of Commerce had a mountain of supplies sitting ready, bought cheap, waiting for exactly this. So when Kub came crawling with a war chest and no dignity, we were the ones holding the food. And we did not offer a discount. Look at the machine my brother built on my 1 sentence. 5 provinces. A duchy here, a province there, every merchant house loosely tied to our family. All quietly buying grain and crystals in the peaceful north, where nobody suspected a thing. The paper trail traced back to Dad and other counts, so nothing pointed at me or my voice in the dark. Every company that helped took a cut as an information fee, so they were loyal, fed, and silent. And the whole apparatus sat on a mountain of cheap supplies for months, doing nothing, waiting for one specific day. The day a superpower turned into a beggar. When that day came, we set the price. Kub paid it. What choice did they have? Starve? Or hand their treasury to a chamber of commerce that had somehow, impossibly, prepared for their exact defeat? Every scavenger nation showed up late to bid on the scraps. We already owned the table, and the whole operation had a perfect disguise. My brother threw a lavish banquet in Dani province, supposedly just to welcome his little brother to town. Music, dancing, every allied merchant in attendance. To the outside world, it was a rich noble showing off. In reality, it was a cover, a way to gather every partner in the United Chamber of Commerce in one room, without a single soul realizing the chamber existed. My brother opened the dancing with his fiancée. I worked the crowd like a social butterfly, shaking hands with count sons and guild vice presidents. Nobody in that ballroom knew they were standing inside the biggest war profiteering scheme in the province. That's the art of it. The best conspiracy looks exactly like a party. That's the whole con, and it's beautiful. A famine is a discount if you know first. A war is a monopoly if you know first. I had a voice in my soul that told me first, so I never bet. I only collected, every single time. And the best part? I did none of it. My brother ran the network. My knights ran the shops. Liam ran 2/3 of everything else. I lay on a sofa in a manor, half asleep, watching a kingdom pour its treasury into my family's pockets. My elder brother covered his forehead and quietly took over my workload, so I could keep napping with dignity. His words roughly, "In the first month you worked hard. After that you basically vanished." Correct. That's the plan working. If I'm still doing the job I hired wrong. But money wasn't the only thing the voice was steering, because somewhere in all this, I'd started nudging fate itself. Let me tell you about the North Wind Adventure Squad. They were a small band of adventurers, a captain named Corvin, a girl named Ilara, a few others, nobodies at the start. The kind of scrappy crew that scrapes by taking ghoul hunting jobs in nowhere towns. And I met them in the least glamorous way possible, in a dive. First, though, the money. Because by now the Cube War had paid out, and my brother gave me the number. 300 million gold coins. I'd guessed 100 million would be nice. 300. From one sentence I'd heard in the dark. My brother laid out the split like an accountant with a conscience. Half to the family. A cut to the great aunt whose name we borrowed. A fifth to the royal family. The rest to us, with a slice set aside for our fourth brother as his personal favor. I tried to take less. He refused. Even close brothers keep clean accounts. I stopped arguing and became stupefyingly rich. Then, disguised as broke adventurers, my brother and I went to a bar called the House of Drunkards to meet 5 starving kids. The North Wind Adventure Squad. Foreigners, far from home, dead broke. There was Corvin, the captain, a magic swordsman pretending to be a plain one. Ilara, his second, a priest of the god of dawn. Reese, his little brother, a ranger. Zephyr, a quiet arcanist. And Ayla, Corvin's fiancée, a half-baked fire mage and a walking disaster. She had just gotten their entire life savings stolen, which left 5 heroes-to-be with growling stomachs and no dinner. So I ordered a table full of roast meat, and their stomachs sang so loud my brother had to look over. And I told them to come eat. Then, on the way out, I handed Corvin a pouch. 15 gold coins. To these kids, that's 5,000 pounds of wheat. A fortune. Pay it back whenever, I said. No interest. Corvin nearly refused out of pride. Then he swore on his name to repay me 100-fold. And I have absolutely no doubt he will, because I'm the only one at that table who knows he's going to become a legend. Here's the funny part. My brother this whole time was convinced I had a crush. He watched me stare at the girls' table, buy them food, press gold into a stranger's hands. And he concluded that his weird little brother had finally fallen in love. He spent the entire operation quietly impressed that I'd found romance in a dive bar. Then we got home, he asked me straight out which girl I liked, and I looked at him completely blank. It took him a full minute to realize I wasn't romancing anyone. I was investing. In a band of future heroes, before they were anyone, when a hot meal and 15 gold could buy a lifetime of loyalty. He was mortified. I was just early. Same as always. They had no idea they were a story I was reading before it happened, because Ilara had recently stumbled onto something, an artifact, a false eye that let her sense truth and lies. And a few times, sitting across from these cheerful adventurers, I felt the prickle of being watched. The eye, quietly checking whether their kind, noble friend was telling the truth. He was. I only ever wanted to make friends, but my attendant Liam felt it too, and afterward we compared notes, and I remembered exactly what the voice had told me. The gears of fate were turning. The legendary story of the North Wind Adventure Squad was beginning, and I was the one, quietly, off to the side, oiling the gears. Think about what that means. Somewhere out there, a band of nobodies is destined to become a legend. Songs, stories, the whole thing. And before any of it happened, Before they were anyone, a lazy lord bought them dinner, floated them a loan, told them to pay it back whenever. Not out of charity, because the voice had whispered their name, and I recognized a rising star while it was still a broke kid hunting ghouls for rent money. When their legend gets written, nobody will know the boring rich guy who quietly kept them fed through the lean years. That's fine. I don't need the credit. I need the friendship of a legend before it's expensive. That's the whole trick of the guidance of fate in the end. It doesn't make me strong, it makes me early. Early to the famine, early to the war, early to the heroes, early to the treasure under the reef, early to the door in the ground. In a world where everyone else is reacting, I'm the only man who gets to prepare. And preparation, it turns out, beats power more often than power would ever admit. That's the strange thing my life had become. I didn't just build a country. I'd become a man who could see the shape of the future and reach into it. A famine, a war, a rising band of heroes not yet famous. I saw them all coming, and I chose carefully which ones to feed and which ones to dodge. Not because I was the strongest, I was still just a high-rank silver in a world with legendaries and gods. But strength isn't the only edge. Knowing is an edge, and I had the best information broker in any world living rent-free inside my soul. So let me tell you where the lazy fifth son ended up. Rewind. 18 years old. A boy whose one ambition was to never be asked to do anything. Called lazy by his own father. Average talent. No power, no plans. A kid who picked the pioneer path only because a voice made staying home feel like a waste. Now look at him. A territory carved out of goblin wasteland, grown into towns and mines and industries. An army of knights sworn to his sword, powered up on treasures the future handed him. A legendary sorceress owing him 30 years. Elite killers gifted by a 200-year-old great-granduncle. A merchant empire draining a kingdom's treasury. A band of future heroes rising under his quiet hand. And a family. A mother's silk scarf. A father's proud silence. A brother's hand on the saddle. A family that finally looked at the boy nobody bet on and saw a man. Same lazy kid. He just aimed the laziness at an empire and let it compound. And he still didn't want to work. That never changed. The very last thing I did once the gold was flowing was quit. I handed the whole operation to my brother Alaric, rolled off the sofa, told Liam to drop everything. We were going to go visit my fourth brother's territory. A vacation. In the middle of getting historically rich, because what's the point of building a machine if you have to keep feeding it yourself? So that's the story. A reborn nobody, a monthly voicemail from destiny, and the least ambitious man in the kingdom accidentally becoming one of its rising powers, one nap at a time. But here's the thing about a man who can hear the future. The voice hadn't stopped. It never stops. There's always a next war to see coming, a next disaster to buy cheap, a next band of heroes whose legend is quietly, gently, beginning under my hand. The North Wind Squad's story was just starting. The Cube Kingdom's ruin was just the first domino. And somewhere out there, a girl who is the true heir of a rotten family is coming home to set 200 years right. And I'm the one who accidentally kicked that whole thing loose. The empire's built, the gold's flowing, the gears of fate are turning. And the laziest man in the world is exactly where he always wanted to be. On a horse, heading somewhere he doesn't have to work. A voice in his soul that already knows how it ends. And a small, patient smile because he knows too. Ask me again in a year how far a lazy man can go when the future whispers in his ear. You won't believe the answer.